Hello, everyone. How's it going?
Yeah, hey guys, how are you? Thank you so much for being at our webinar today. My name is Noor, and I'm a medical doctor. I'm working here at MedMastery. And today we have a really cool topic for you. It's AI for academic research, and we're going to be showing you how to use consensus to speed up some of your research workflows. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide, Daniel. Yeah, so like I already mentioned in the beginning, my name is Noor, and I'm a medical doctor. And right now I'm working at MedMastery as a medical AI program lead. So I'm hosting and coordinating an AI webinar series. And it's aimed to teach clinicians how AI is currently being used in medicine.
Um, cool. And then my name is Daniel. I lead the growth and partnership side at Consensus. And so I work with a ton of research institutions, universities, medical professionals, clinical researchers, showing them how to use Consensus and how to get, and kind of how clinicians today are using it to speed up their decision making and how researchers are using it to find better research faster.
Great. And before we go into the webinar, I just want to give a few words on who MedMastery is. So MedMastery is a medical e-learning platform. And what we do is we offer video-based courses that teach you essential clinical skills. And this means that we have courses from loads of specialties. Daniel, you can go to the next slide.
Awesome.
Thank you. So yeah, on this slide, you can see that we have loads of specialties, right? So we have courses from ultrasound to imaging. We have loads of courses on emergency medicine and critical care and much, much more. So in case you are interested in watching our courses and learning essential clinical skills, make sure you check us out after the webinar, and we'll even have a discount code for you. And I also want to let you know that we're currently hosting a webinar series, which is completely for free. If you sign up with a trial account to MedMastery, then you have access to all of our current and also our previous webinars. So you can see on the slides that we've done loads of webinars on AI in medicine. Like, for example, in April, we did a webinar with faculty of Yale School of Medicine, where a clinician described to us how you can use AI scribes effectively and safely in healthcare. AI scribes is one of the top use cases of AI in medicine, so it was a really great webinar. But we also have loads of other topics, like we've done a webinar on AI in cardiac CT, and cardiology, AI for medical education, and much, much more. And we've also done another webinar with Consensus a few months ago as well. Okay, and I just want to let everybody know how you can use this platform. So if you look to the right of your screens, you have the chat, you have the Q&A where you can submit your questions to the end of the webinar, and you also have the poll. So that's the third one down. There's a poll which is currently live, and we would love to know from our audience. Who's in our audience? So are you guys mostly clinicians here? Are you clinicians who are practicing but are also involved heavily in research? Let us know so that Daniel can better tailor the content for you.
Awesome.
Okay, I'm just going to give them a second to answer.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, right
Cool.
now the majority of people are saying they are practicing clinicians heavily involved in research.
Cool.
Yeah, the majority of people are still sticking with that one.
Okay, cool. Good to know.
Okay, I think we can go to the next slide.
Oops. Um, Yeah, I guess I can do this one. Nor I think it's in the notes. Yes, just a quick disclaimer before we get into how consensus works, what it is, and how to use it. Consensus and any AI tools are designed to support clinical decision making and research by providing additional context and evidence based information. So it doesn't make any clinical decisions for you or replace professional judgment. At the end of the day, as a researcher and as a clinician, that responsibility falls on you. And so a lot of these tools, especially Consensus, is really just designed to be able to help you make better decisions faster. And we'll go into what Consensus is and then actually walk through use cases of how you can use it to run questions and find papers.
Okay, so we are going to focus on specifically how you can use consensus to make academic research easier. And this is going to be the focus of this webinar. Before we move into the main live demonstration part, we want to know from our audience, are you guys currently using any AI tools to help you with your research? So just let us know in the chat.
Yeah, and that'll help us figure out or kind of communicate as well what the differences are. I've got a slide on some tools as well, but it'll help you get a sense of what different tools are better at.
Yeah, so
Okay,
I know
cool.
from a couple of our audience members already, like when we sent out our surveys, like a lot of people say that they do use AI, but they're not really familiar with how to use it specifically or how to use it accurately and efficiently. So yeah, that's usually what our audience says.
Cool. Okay. And I think maybe what I can do, Nurzal, let me just dive into how AI-based approaches are different from traditional literature searching.
Mhm.
And then I'll talk about maybe a couple different tools. And then for everyone in the audience, we'll actually go into consensus and spend most of this time in the webinar walking through how consensus works. Awesome. So Voss said elicit. That's great. It's a pretty strong tool for researchers. And so, yeah, we'll go through and kind of address and talk about how consensus is different from a lot of these as well. So to give you a sense of kind of the existing status quo, and just a quick note too, as you have questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. There's already a number in there from Jude that are really good, and so I'll kind of address these as we go through the webinar and the walkthrough. So in terms of like a lot of the tools or the main tools that are out there today, we typically have two types. So there's kind of general consumer tools, so OpenAI, Gemini, Perplexity, Google Copilot, that are often used. And these are not built for research. These pull from the entire web. There's hallucinations. There's no built features for researchers within them. Yes, yeah, I see. Thana has mentioned ChatGPT and Copilot. And on the other hand, you have a lot of traditional search tools. So PubMed, Google Scholar, these lack a lot of AI innovation. They have an older form of search, and they may not necessarily be user friendly. And so a lot of people are looking for a combination of these two things, and that's really where consensus comes in. And so there are a number of tools like consensus. Open evidence is a really big one. We hear from the clinical space. Elicit is another for researchers. It's kind of smaller than consensus, but it's still quite useful. And so this middle ground is really where we're seeing a lot of the kind of most advances. And so just a quick slide, because if many of you are practicing clinicians as well, you may have also heard of open evidence. It's quite popular for clinicians. The best way to describe the difference between consensus and open evidence is you can think about open evidence like an AI up-to-date. So if you've used up-to-date before, it's focused on guidelines and practical applications. Open evidence has about 8 million papers and mostly focuses on the New England Journal of Medicine and JAMA. Consensus, you can think about like an AI PubMed. So it's actually a bit more focused on research, has over 220 million papers, and is most typically used by specialists and clinical researchers, especially clinicians who are also actually heavily involved in research. And we'll show you some of the more powerful features that are involved here. But it is a research-focused AI platform to be able to help you find better papers faster. And so a couple core things before we get into the details with consensus. The way that consensus works is when you ask a question, it does a search first and then AI analysis second. And the reason that's really important is that it only searches through published research, so peer-reviewed papers, case studies, journals, etc. And so if information doesn't exist in a peer-reviewed paper or a case study that it can point to, it will not provide you an answer. And so this is one of the biggest things, that it is very hallucination resistant, because it is actually always going to point you back to a published peer-reviewed paper. And I'll show you what that looks like in consensus, but every single answer is cited, and those citations point back to the paper. And then we have a number of paper analysis features as well. We also are very on top of retractions, hallucinations, etc. And so we have a whole bunch of models built in to prevent hallucinations. We are constantly watching for any journals that are flagged as like predatory journals, papers that get retracted or removed within a week. So we have a number of systems built in to make it a very high quality research platform. In terms of a bit of a background, so Consensus has been around for about 3 years and has actually grown to one of the largest communities of researchers in the world. So we have over 10 million students, researchers, and faculty from all around the world that use Consensus. We partner with over 100 universities. So these are some of the world's best institutions across the world. So that's, more clinical institutions like Mayo Clinic, um, uh, academic institutions like ETH Zurich, actually most of the schools in Switzerland. MD Anderson is a large cancer research center in the US, University of Michigan. The list kind of really goes on. And so we have 100 plus universities that we've partnered with via the library for access. But across the world, we have researchers at over 15,000 institutions that use Consensus. And just to give you a sense of scale, Consensus is actually in the top 5 most used research tools in the world. So the ranking is typically Google Scholar, PubMed, Semantic Scholar, and then Consensus. And so we've passed most, if not all, other tools like Web of Science, Scopus, Elicit within the last 2 years. And so we have tons of people that use Consensus. I think we do about 5 to 10% of Google Scholar's traffic actually. And so we've grown quite a lot over the past 3 years, and we do that by really staying close to the researcher and understanding what do they need for us to be able to build. In terms of the papers themselves and where these papers come from, we have over 220 million journal articles, preprints, and conference proceedings. We have coverage in about 99% of Q1 impact journals, and we have coverage across all academic disciplines. So where this becomes really valuable is it's not just clinical research data, but it's data across fields. And so we have basically everything that's on PubMed, and then we actually have 24 times the amount of papers that are in PubMed. So it's PubMed, and you can think about it like almost everything on Google Scholar. And so where this becomes really useful is, you're going to get really good answers for clinical research, as we'll demonstrate. But if you're doing any research as well that crosses fields, so if you're doing something in biomechanics or other fields, that's where Consensus is kind of like is really, really valuable, because it's going to be able to help you find papers that you would have really missed in other places. In terms of the search itself, we have, actually, one thing I forgot to mention is we also have a number of partnerships with publishers like Wiley, the APA, Taylor Francis, ACS, and more, that give us full text access to paywall papers that we can actually read through as part of the search and summary. And so I'll explain how that works a bit later on, but that helps you find better papers from your searches. And in terms of the search itself, our search is best in class. And so we use both the full text of papers and our own custom built models to be able to find papers that are relevant. So we use both traditional keyword search and semantic search. So we're able to find not just papers that match the words you're typing, but papers that are highly related, most typically about the same topic, but may not use the exact same words. And so this helps a lot of researchers find papers that they missed in other places. What this results in combination with the models that we have, is that our search results on their own. So not even thinking about the AI summarization, but just our search results are actually, we've done independent studies, and we actually have upwards of 9% higher retrieval accuracy compared to PubMed and Google Scholar. And so you can trust that the search itself is actually returning more relevant papers. And then on top of that, Consensus actually reads through those papers and provides you an overview of what the research says. Now, in terms of where Consensus fits in the research process, for all of you who are researchers, if you think about your research process, like 3 kind of main areas. So the first one is, you're going and scoping the literature. So you're trying to understand what research is out there. Then you are doing more systematic searches. So you understand a core niche area, and you're now doing more targeted searches within it. And then finally, review, writing, and synthesis. Consensus fits in that first half. So it's really, really useful for being able to find papers and run more targeted searches. When it comes to writing and synthesis, that's where we see researchers use Consensus in combination with other tools. And so, as a researcher, you know that you have many different tools in your stack. So you can think about Consensus as one of those core ones when it comes to finding papers, in the same way you think about like a Google Scholar, for example. And yeah, so now what we'll do is we'll actually just, I'm going to hop mostly into consensus and we'll actually run you through a couple of core examples. And what I'll do is I've got two kind of use cases. So the first one is more focused on like a case study and something you would actually do as like a point of care tool. But let's start actually with a different one. So let's start more with a research question, just given that most of the folks in here are actually researchers. And so let me go ahead and just quickly hop over to consensus. And let's just share this tab instead. Oops, share tab, cool. Awesome. Great. And so when you go to consensus, and I'll actually just go ahead and I'll, let me just pop this link in the chat. Consensus is entirely free to use. So anyone's able to actually go and try a search. So feel free to pop it open and try this along with me. And then when there is a premium version as well, that I'll explain a bit more about. But if there is a part, like a kind of bundle we have with MedMaster too, where if you have a MedMaster account, you can get a discount. And there is a plan as well where you can get free premium for a year. And I'll explain what all this means in a bit later on. But I just want to start off with consensus is free to use. So feel free to open that up and start trying it as well. And so here are consensus. And, at the front here, you've got a very similar search interface. So I'm going to go ahead and pop in a question. And I'm going to say, show me the research from the last 5 years on measurable residual disease in acute myeloid leukemia. So let's say I'm doing research in leukemia and I want to understand, the research on this topic in the last few years. Now, before I run this search, there's a couple things I wanted to point out. So the first one is that you're able to apply any sort of filters that you would like to the actual research. Now, you can filter by the year, by journal impact, by citations. And if you click on methodology here, you can also filter by the study design. So for example, if I only want human studies only, I can check this box. And let's say I want case reports and let's say like meta-analysis and RCTs, I can click those as well. And that will apply these filters to the search. So only studies that meet this criteria will actually be surfaced. There's a number of other ones as well, like countries, for example, and this is the country of the population as well as field of study. But you can use a combination of any of these filters in your search. You can also just type them in. You can see here that I've typed in find research from the last 5 years, and consensus will be intelligent enough to actually help find those papers. Now, you can also upload papers to the search, and we have a mode called medical mode, which effectively limits it down to the top medical journals and guidelines. And so if you, for example, only want to see like clinical related papers, you can just type in medical mode and that will switch this to medical mode. So it basically restricts the amount of papers to effectively what you would find on PubMed. But for this one, I'm just going to hit all and let's go ahead and run this search. So what's happening now as you're running a search in consensus is consensus is going to do a couple things behind the scenes. So the first thing it's going to do is figure out from your question, what are the best search terms that it can run to be able to find papers that are relevant. And so you can see here, it's looking at papers on MRD across in acute myeloid leukemia across key subtopics, and it's split it out into two different searches that it's running on its own. You can also see that it's applied filters from the past 5 years, so from 2021, and it's found a ton of papers. So it's found actually 4.9 million papers. And then from there, it's shortlisted them down to 87 that are highly relevant to my actual topic. And then from there, it's including the top 20 most relevant. And on the right-hand side here, I can actually see the papers that it's found. And I'll dive into this in a second. But what it'll do is it finds these papers. And then once it's found papers that are relevant, it'll actually read through those papers. So you can see here, reading 20 papers. And it's actually going to read through the full text or the abstract of those papers, depending on what we have available. Now, let me just minimize this for a second, and we'll come back to this. But you can see here on the left-hand side, this is the AI summary. So now the consensus has actually read through those 20 papers. I'm able to see the overview of the research. So it's kind of broken it down to a couple of areas. It's giving me a table as well, looking at different modalities, sensitivities, key points, as well as all the papers that actually cited it that I can find. And so as I go down, it's broken it out into more sections and giving me a small conclusion. And I'm able to ask follow-up questions or ask it to make a table. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. But I wanted to dive into the papers. So let's say over here, I can open up references. And all the papers here are actual peer-reviewed papers. So everything is tied to a real DOI. So you'll never get something that is like a fake citation. These all actually exist as real papers. And the way that I know that is if I click on this, this will actually, sorry, give me a second here. Yeah, there we go. It takes me to a paper page. So I can see the abstract here. And then if I actually click on the PDF, If the PDF is available, it will actually pull that right into Consensus. So you can see here, it's got the full PDF that I can go ahead and look through, as well as I can look at a snapshot. And this is going to give me a quick summary of the paper when it comes to things like populations, the outcomes, and there's a number of other attributes that it will look to. So this is usually pretty quick. My Wi-Fi is a bit weird today. And so feel free to go ahead and try this out. Let me give this a quick refresh and see if that'll help it. But what it'll typically do is pull out those 7 abstracts or those 7 pieces of information to be able to help you get a better sense of the paper itself. And if I wanted to read the full paper, I can just click on the PDF, and this will actually open up the full PDF for me that I can go ahead and read through. Now, a couple things that are important here. Consensus does not treat every state paper the same. So I saw that there was a question in the Q&A from Jude around, can Consensus help me assess study quality, or does it treat a small retrospective cohort the same as large RCT? And the answer is that it doesn't. And so for every paper that's in Consensus, it's actually pre-processed. So we're taking that paper and we're analyzing it before we even return results to you. And that way we get a sense of how impactful a paper is. So, this one, for example, is a literature review. It's from a very rigorous journal, and it's got 50 citations and a number of other functionalities. And so when Consensus is doing the search, it's doing 2 things. So the first one is it's looking at which papers are actually relevant based on the title, the abstract, and the full text. And the second one is you can think about it like a quality indicator. So it's looking at things like, when was this paper published? How many citations does it have? Who is the author? What is the journal? Is it a high impact journal? And then based on those, it's actually assessing those and considering those in the papers that it shortlists. And so you can see here, I've got a paper from 2024 with only 8 citations, and this is ranked as number 3. So this is something that's highly relevant. It's from a strong journal. It's recent, and it's actually related to what I'm talking about. And so typically in other tools, it may not account for this. So when you search up these keywords, it might just look at papers that have high citations or high journal. We're looking at a number of different pieces of information across the paper before we actually surface it. There's a couple other modes too. So if I wanted to see a table mode, for example, this is going to give me more of a table view of all these papers with pieces of information about population and methods and results that I can really quickly scan through to understand which ones are potentially relevant for me to be able to open up. And so, it's pretty helpful to be able to explain. I think I'm having a Wi-Fi issue today, but usually you'll see a bunch of information that's populated there in the table. I can also download these. So if there's papers that are relevant, I can export these to RIS. So I can import them into EndNote, Zotero, Mendeley, or generate a bibliography as well of these papers. And so one thing I want to show you now is, now that we've got, kind of base understanding of the actual core search, I can go ahead and ask follow-up questions. So you can see here, it's already got, a recommended follow-up question. But let's go ahead and do something like create a table of the different, let's say, what do we have in here? Of the different, here, I'm trying to figure out what's a good follow-up question for this one. Okay, here, you know what? Create a table of the main research groups, actually, the main researchers who are involved in this research and their research groups. Add a column for their core topics of focus. And so now what I'm doing is I'm asking a follow-up question into Consensus. And so it has a context of the thread and all the research that it's found to date. So it has all this information from the previous question. And now what it's doing is it's going to be able to take my question and apply it to it. And so in my question, I've asked it to create a table of the main researchers who are involved in this research, their research groups, and add a column for their core topic of focus. So you can see here, Consensus is reading the thread. So it's reading the past search that I just did. And then from there, it's going to be able to extract out who the authors are and actually create this table for me. So I've done this example looking at the researchers. But you can imagine if you're looking at treatments, if you're looking at, for example, like drug development or drug discovery, Consensus is able to look through all the research and create a table that's really customized to what you're looking for. And so over here, you can see that it's gone ahead and actually created a table of the different core researchers here, their core institutions. So I can see here, Farhad from the University of Texas, MD Anderson, focuses on a specific part here. And here are the papers that he's either been a primary or a secondary author on, and as well as some of the people that he typically co-authors with. And so really useful. And this feature is very flexible, right? So I've asked it to create a table of researchers, but you can ask it to create a table of anything. I can also do things like, show me a timeline of when the research was published over the last few years. And Consensus is actually able to also generate visuals for you. So there's a number of visuals that are built in, timeline, tables. There are evidence graphs as well. And so there's a bunch of different kind of follow-up functionality that you can do within Consensus to start off with a broad search and then get more specific. And so you can see here, let's see, it's gone ahead and actually just created a table for me looking at the different timeline. So very flexible when it comes to doing follow-up searches. I can also run a deep search, and a deep search is like a mini lit review. So if I go ahead here and let's just see an example of here, metabolic syndrome over the last 20 years, or this one's a good one. Deep search is just like a button you can check here, and it's a more rigorous search. So rather than looking at the top 20 papers, it's actually going to be able to do multiple things behind the scenes. So you can see here, it's run 3 different searches. It's actually crawling through a citation graph, and so it's found the papers that are relevant. It's actually looking through their citations. It's generated a whole search strategy, so you can see it's running many different searches behind the scenes. It's retrieving all those papers, aggregating them, shortlisting them down, and then what this will do is it will aggregate the top 50 papers instead of the top 20 papers and give you a more detailed breakdown of what the research actually says. So you can see here, it's finding tons of different papers from its searches. This number keeps ticking up. And then, once we wait a little while here, it shortlisted it down to the top 50. And now it's actually going to give me a much more detailed breakdown of what the research shows on this topic. So this is a great way to be able to start off a lit review, for example. And again, you can see all the papers here that is shortlisted on the side, and you can just continue to kind of scroll down to be able to see which papers it decided were most relevant for what you were looking at. Awesome. And so there's a couple of other core things, and you can see here there's like different visualizations that it'll come in with around, what was the actual search strategy that it did, and then it'll continue to kind of fill out this report for me. I can go ahead and also download this once it's done as a PDF. I can share it with others. I can go ahead and I'll just drop this link into the chat. So anyone can actually go ahead and see the report that I've ran. So it makes it very easy to be able to share with other researchers, with maybe students you're researching with, or other clinicians. So you can see here's an example of a visualization where it's kind of showing me all the papers that were published. Now, what's also really cool with Consensus is if there's a paper that I find interesting, so let's say this one here on, here on the metabolic syndrome, it's got a ton of citations. I can actually go ahead and generate a citation graph. So if I click on that, it actually opens up a graph of related citations to that paper. So I can see here, I can start seeing papers that this paper cited, as well as papers that came afterward that cited the paper that I'm interested in. I can go ahead and actually make the density high here, so I can increase the number of papers that are involved. And what's great is I can add multiple papers. So let's say if I find this paper interesting, so here, this one, it looks like it cited a paper that this paper referenced. I can go ahead and also add this to the chart. So now the citation graph is regenerating with those 2 papers. So now I can start to see papers that have these 2 in common. So this is great for being able to triangulate research and find papers that are actually related to ones that I'm interested in. So as researchers, this is a very good way to be able to dive down that rabbit hole. So you've started off with a broader search, you've asked some follow-up questions, maybe you found a paper that you found really interesting, now you're diving into the citation graph. And as you're doing this, you can also save these papers to your library. So I can go ahead and save these to a folder in my library or to a collection. And then when you're in your library over here, these are all the papers that you've saved or you've imported from other tools. And so in your library, you're able to actually import right from Zotero. So if you are using Zotero, you're able to just do a bulk import right away. You can upload an RIS file if you're using EndNote or other tools, or you can actually paste in just DOIs of papers, and it'll be able to load them in here. Now, this is great because if you are, let's say you have a bunch of papers saved on your desktop and you're using Zotero, it'll actually pull in all the full text of all those papers. And so if Consensus doesn't have the full text for a paper, but you do, you can actually upload it into your environment here, and then you can run an analysis on that paper. And anything you upload is private, so nothing is shared or used to train any models. And so you don't have to worry about any copyright issues when you are uploading papers into Consensus. It's like having it on your own personal Google Drive. Now, in the library, what's really great is that I can actually see all my folders here. And so let's go into here, maybe all my research on like omega-3s, or even actually, let's look at this one on athletes. And what I can do now is I can actually do analysis with this. So here you can see I've attached a folder to my search by selecting it from my library, or I can, go down here and search it. And what I can do is I can say, show me a research gaps matrix that highlights populations that I'm missing within my collection on the muscle development within athletes. And so now what Consensus is doing is it's able to do that search that we had shown on the broader sense, but I've restricted it to a collection. And so now what it's going to do is it's actually going to look through the papers in my folder that I've got here. And I've only got about 10 papers in here, so it's a smaller collection. But you can do this with libraries that are, thousands, tens of thousands. It's able to just use that and actually look through the papers that are just in your library. So you can really constrict it down. And it's not just doing the search here, but it's actually doing an analysis as well. So it's gone through and actually read through all the papers that are in my library here. And now what it's doing is it's going to actually create a map of their populations and find areas that are missing from my collection. Now, this is extremely valuable to any researchers because as you're doing research and you have your library, you know that it's up to you to figure out what's missing in your library and then being able to fill it. And so rather than figuring out and going down rabbit holes, Consensus can do that for you. So you can see here, it's actually created a like a visual map for me of where I have papers and where papers are missing within my collection. So you can see for different populations here and different focuses. So for adult athletes, for molecular adaptation, for example, or for longitudinal studies, I'm missing tons of papers. But for other ones, I may actually have a lot. So I have for youth athletes and muscle hypertrophy. Now, more than the other cool thing is when you actually attach papers to Consensus in your search like this, and Consensus has a full text, it actually shows you exactly where in the paper it got an answer from. And so if I open this up now and I go over to the PDF, you can actually see the Consensus highlighted in the PDF where it got that answer from. And so this is, again, extremely valuable when you're doing research because you can actually see where the answers are coming from within your library or within your papers. And you can do this to any paper that you have the full text. So even if I go back to my previous searches and I find that there's papers that I think are interesting, I can go ahead and I can actually add them to my search. So let's go ahead and remove this, for example. I can go and actually hit ask, and this is going to add this paper to my search. So you can see here it's attached it. And now I can just ask this paper a question, or I can ask multiple papers a question within my search. But what's also cool is I can remove that collection. So now Consensus is, if I ask a follow-up, Consensus will just search the broader index rather than just my library. And so, my first search, I had asked it to identify gaps within my collection. And now my second search, I can say, fill these gaps. And so now Consensus is looking through all. So it's looking through its large index instead of just my library. And it's going to be able to recognize the gaps that it identified in the previous search. And now it's going to run targeted searches to find papers that can actually address or fill those gaps. Lawrence asked, can you make it search a specific string in a database like PubMed as in a systematic research review? Yes, you can. And so Consensus also supports Boolean search. So for example, if I searched up something like, let's say like muscle development, if I do quotes, I'll say muscle development and omega-3. When I run this search, Consensus will do a more classic keyword or Boolean search. So it'll look up, papers that specifically say muscle development and omega-3 in it. So you can do you can do the same searches you're doing in PubMed if you want to have that more controlled aspect to it. Great question, Lawrence. Thanks for asking that. Cool. So just say answered. Great. And so now going back to my initial example here, you can see that what Consensus did, which is awesome, is it actually was able to identify the gaps that it identified in the matrix. So it booked them out here. And then it actually ran targeted searches to address each of those gaps, read through papers, and then gave me an overview. So here, middle-aged older adults, elite female athletes, team sport athletes, and I can see that I can go ahead and look at these and say, okay, great. Here's one I don't have in my library. Let's go ahead and actually save it to my athletes collection. And so it's a great way of being able to identify, again, do an analysis on your library, and then actually combine that with that broader search. And let's say, for example, this paper is one that I really like, and if I actually open this up here, once this PDF loads, you can see that it scrolls you to exactly where in the paper it actually found that research from. And if I hover over, it's showing me that exact quote as well. So really powerful. And again, if you want to see a citation graph, you just click on this button here, and that's going to open up the citation graph for that paper. So you can start to see now how you can go from just a classic search, and you can really start to string together the multiple really core aspects of consensus. So we showed a classic search. We showed the ability to generate tables and get more specific. We showed saving that to your library, doing an analysis on your library, and then opening up a citation graph from a paper as well. And then again, saving those back to your library and going back and doing analysis. And so we've gone through a couple kind of core aspects of consensus, but I mean, right away, I'm hoping that you can kind of see how this might be helpful for you as a researcher. Cool. So let me take a quick pause and see if there's any core Q&As or questions in here that might be relevant. And feel free to toss stuff in the chat as well that we can kind of go through or run core examples of. Cool. How does consensus handle conflicting evidence? If I search a topic where studies generally disagree, will it surface that or flatten the evidence into a single answer? Great question. So if I go back here, we can actually, the consensus has this feature called the consensus meter, or a yes/no. And let's go ahead and try one. So do statins increase the risk of cognitive decline? Now, what consensus will do when you ask a question that has a yes or no answer to it, is it'll actually show you a visualization of where the research lands. So let's go ahead and just give this a second here to be able to run. So you can see, again, consensus is doing the search in the background. It's running parallel searches. It's found the top 20 now. It's reading through those papers. And you can see here, it's actually giving me a consensus meter showing me where the research lies. So it's got a set of about 18 papers it's looked at. And I can see here that about 16% of them say no, statins do not increase the risk of cognitive declines. But I can see that there are some that actually indicate mixed or yes. And now this is extremely useful for you to be able to understand, not all research is like one-dimensional. And I can even see here in the citations, it's color-coded it to say which ones say no versus which ones potentially actually say yes. And so in this one, for example, it's looking at a very specific population. So I can now go in and say, I'll maybe attach this paper, or even if I open the references here, I can compare maybe papers. So I've attached this one here, 18, and I'll attach this one here, 19, and I'll say, what are the core differences between these papers? Why do the results differ? Create a table showing the different aspects of the papers. And now consensus, because I've attached these two papers to the search, is actually just going to look at those two papers and be able to go ahead and read through them. And again, if it has access to the full text, and you can actually see here, if there's a check mark beside a paper, consensus has a full text, either via partnership with a publisher or that it's an open access, and it's actually read through the full text. And so when I'm doing that, it's able to use that in the answer. So you can see here, I've attached the abstracts. We already have the full text. So it's actually read through the full text of both of those papers. And now it's been able to give me a key analysis. So what are the differences? So it looks like they had two very different populations that they were studying. They had different findings. And you can see here it broke out the actual findings and why it differed between those two papers. And again, I can hover over here and I can see exactly where on the paper this is coming from. So if I open this up, I go to the PDF, you'll see that it's showing me right here from the conclusion where it's actually referencing this. So show on paper, there we go. It's gone and actually pulled from the material section. So it does a great job of being able to understand the papers and actually match them. And so very helpful for you as a researcher to understand where research differs. If you are working with students as well, we find this is a really effective teaching tool to be able to help educate students as well, that not all research is equal. and that depending on the type of patient or depending on the specific criteria you're looking at, it is the research may actually differ in what people typically see. Awesome. Let's look at some other questions, and feel free to just drop stuff in that Q&A. Easiest way for me to be able to see them. Um, cool. Maria asked, can I store the search and repeat after some months to update the evidence? Are new papers then highlighted? Great question, Maria. All of your searches are stored in history. So you can see it here. And yes, you can run the search again. You can even, let's say you've got one here from months ago. You can say, hey, what does the most recent research look like? And it'll be able to highlight that. We update papers multiple times a month. So typically about once a week, new papers are loaded in. And so you are able to see, papers that were published in 2026, for example. So on this statin one, I can actually just say like, only look at papers published in 2026 or recently. And so now what it's doing is it's going to effectively look at your previous searches, maybe rerun searches, and now apply filters to them to be able to focus more on newer information that was published. You can see here it's decided to go ahead and actually just rerun the searches, where it's looking at papers that were published from 2026. And so this is a great way to be able to update a search to see, hey, is there any new research and what have those papers actually published on this as well. Awesome. So you can see here, it's looking at papers all from 2026. So this one is like brand new published, not even cited yet. It was able to do that. Same thing with this one. This one has 2 citations, again, 2026. So now I've gone ahead and just asked it to basically limit it down. And it's gone ahead and done a great job at actually doing that. So I can actually see, and you can compare the two, right? You can say, how does research in 2026 differ from the last 5 years? Or where has the research actually evolved over time? And Consensus will be able to read through the papers and give you that analysis as well. Awesome. Adnafu asked, does it do analysis and write-up? You can. And so you are, depending, and feel free to tell me if this isn't answering the question. If you're doing, you can upload papers to it, you can upload information to it, and you can ask it to write in like whatever way that you're looking for. And so I guess it depends on the context of your question. But for example, let me ask a different question in Consensus. So I'll do one that's actually more focused on like a case study, right? Like if you're using it, you can also use Consensus as a point of care solution. So let's say, for example, this is from another example that came up, very similar to the one we did in the last webinar, but it's actually more for urology. But let's say you're seeing a very rare case that presents. If you're a urologist and this presents in the hospital, you've got a 7-year-old with obstructing kidney stones with PNH. They're taking a specific drug for treatment. And you can also see that they've got an infection and they kind of need some immediate surgery. So I can go ahead and ask a question into Consensus here that's a lot more like focused on a specific decision I have to make. And what Consensus will do is the answer you will get will be more curated to what you're actually looking for here. So I don't know if this answers your question directly, but I felt it was like a pretty interesting use case to be able to show. But in this case, I'm using Consensus rather than a research tool. I'm using it as a point of care tool to be able to help me make a decision really quickly if I'm on the ward or I need to be able to make a decision fast and I need evidence for it. And so what Consensus is doing is the exact same thing we're doing before. So it's gone ahead, it's broken out the search into multiple different searches to be able to find papers that are relevant. It's gone ahead and started to read through all of those abstracts. And so you can see here, it's actually found a number of case reports as well. So now we're not just looking at research papers, we're actually seeing like case reports. And from here, it's actually going to break out, what are the mechanisms and the main risks? What should I be thinking about? It's been able to recognize take the common drug name and recognize like the pharmaceutical, the name of the drug compound itself. Look at dosing, timing, strategies, rationale. So Consensus, in addition to having all these research papers, also has a lot of the most up-to-date guidelines. Anything that's on PubMed or PubMed Central would be in Consensus too. So you can use it not just for research, but you can also use it for point of care solutions if you're looking at that, or that might be interesting as well. And again, you can see here that when I scroll through it, I can actually see that it's found a case report from 2025 that looks like it's actually a fairly rare case report, but looks to be very relevant to this specific case that I'm looking at. And so this is another use case that we see quite often with practicing clinicians who use Consensus as a point of care tool to be able to help support their decisions that they're making. Yeah, I'll send a case study over to Noor that this was actually based off of, where one of the clinicians who was using Consensus was actually able to find a like really rare case study from a journal in Japan that really kind of perfectly addressed the case that they were looking at. And so, again, because Consensus has such a wide index of papers, and because it has such a powerful search, you're able to find like case studies, articles, papers that you wouldn't find in other platforms because you may not know the exact key terms to look for, but it's able to figure out that, hey, here's a case study published recently in Japan, that's actually very highly relevant to what you're looking at. Population is the same, issues are the same, complications are very similar, to help you make an informed decision. And that's kind of a use case that we hear over and over again from clinicians using Consensus, that it's not just for research, but they're actually using it in point of care to help them make evidence-based decisions as well. Cool. Noor, great question. Does it connect to Claude and ChatGPT? Thanks for bringing this up. So, yes, it does actually. Maybe these are some of the resources I can share after as well. Both Claude and ChatGPT have connectors to Consensus that were released actually fairly recently. And so I'll just quickly share a link in the chat. Actually, I'll just go here and show you. This is the link I'll share in the chat. Yeah, so this is Consensus actually. You can connect it with ChatGPT or Claude or something else custom. But what this allows you to do is actually use the best of both worlds. So if you are writing, for example, or doing something in ChatGPT, the connector actually allows it to connect to your Consensus account and then allows it to actually search Consensus and return papers into ChatGPT or Claude. So this is really useful if you are maybe writing a paper, if you are doing an analysis, if you're using it as like a thought partner, or if you already have a flow with Claude or ChatGPT. And the way to do that is if you go to maybe, let's just use ChatGPT, for example, just go to apps, add source, apps, here, connect more. And then you can just go to the App Store and then search up Consensus. And now once it's attached to a chat, you can go ahead and do all sorts of stuff. So I've got a bunch of different examples here, but here's a search I was running on like looking for grants that were helpful, where ChatGPT is both searching the internet as well as actually looking through Consensus. You can see here it's found an actual, where is it? When it cites the sources, it actually will look at sources from Consensus. So it's pretty helpful. You can do things like generate like a reading list, for example. You can upload your kind of course, and it'll be able to generate a reading list for you. And all of these, again, link back to actual papers it's found in Consensus. You can also use it in deep search as well. So yes, it connects to Consensus, it connects to Claude, and there's a bunch of use cases on that link that I shared that kind of show you, I'll put it in the chat, my bad, that will actually show you different things that you can do beyond just searching. So I was actually working with someone who runs the pediatric emergency department in Washington State University, and he actually leads the research department for like a number of connected hospitals. And he uses Claude plus Consensus to actually help with grant writing and finding grants. And so once you start looking at use cases, there's so many more that open up once you kind of combine the power of Consensus to search with some of these other tools. And the connector is also free to use. So you can use the connector with a free Consensus account. You just get more searches and more perks if you're on the premium account.
Daniel, can you also let us know, like, what is the difference between the deep search and the other searches?
Yeah, good question. So let's go back to the home here. And so the best way to describe it is that and I think I ran this over here, right? Yeah, so there's a couple different searches you can run in Consensus. So the normal search is what we've been showing. So that looks at the top 20 papers. And then a deep search it's much more robust. So it actually uses like many different, it'll do multiple different searches together. So rather than, just run 2 to 4 parallel searches, it'll actually run like up to 20 parallel searches. And then rather than just analyze the top 20 papers, it'll analyze and read through the top 50 papers. So it's just a much more robust way. So if I asked, let's say, the exact same question here on here, like my patient has PNH, if I go into Consensus and I click deep search, you'll see that the actual search it does is much more robust. And so instead of just searching, it's going to be, it'll do an initial search. It'll create a whole search strategy around that. it'll start reading through citations and it'll do more. So you see here, it's found core papers, reading through citations, and now it's creating a whole set of like parallel searches that it's going to run to give me a very, very wide coverage. And so that's the difference between a regular search and a deep search. You can just imagine a deep search is like, you stacking like 10 searches together at one time. Now, the difference between the pro plan and the free plan is just a number of searches. So in Consensus, on the free plan, you have a limited number of searches each month. So I believe it's around 10 to 15 searches you get for free, as well as I think 3 deep searches. And when you're on a pro plan or a premium plan, you basically have unlimited searches and then a higher number of deep searches. And if you're using the connector to Claude or ChatGPT, on the free plan, I believe it will give you 10 sources back per search, and then there's a certain limit you can do each month. But on the premium plan, you get way more searches you can do each month, and it gives you back 20 at a time. So it's better for more robust use cases. And if you're going to be using Consensus often rather than very occasionally, then the premium plan helps a lot. We also have tools like paper search. So if you just want to search a paper, you can do that for free in Consensus an unlimited amount of times. And this is basically just like searching any other platform, except it uses our search. A lot of the kind of, the plan stuff is really around the AI searches, where it's doing a lot of this work behind the scenes. Awesome. Cool. I think those were most of the questions. There was one around setting up alerts for recurring searches. Not yet. That is something that we are working on, being able to set up an alert based on topics that you're interested in as new papers come in. So that's something that is coming up and very top of mind for us. We are releasing like new features like every few weeks. So if you sign up for Consensus, you'll probably get a bunch of emails from me, Daniel from Consensus, with new features that are coming out. And usually within once or twice a month, you'll get an email with a new feature that's out in Consensus. So we work pretty quickly. We have tons of people that use Consensus, but we're actually a fairly small team based out of San Francisco. And so, the way that we've gotten here is really just by listening to the clinicians, the researchers who use Consensus and figuring out what they need and then actually building those features. And so that's how we've kind of gotten to this point. But yeah, the best way to learn about Consensus is just to go try it. So pop open that link. It's a website, so there's no mobile app. So you can just go to the website on your phone, your laptop, wherever you are, and then use Consensus. So that's consensus.app. And I'll just put that one more time in the chat here, and anyone can go ahead and get started with a search. Noor, is there anything else you think we should cover before we hop on to the remainder of the slides?
I think you've explained pretty much everything. I think the next thing that you wanted to explain is the Zotero integration, right?
Yeah, I kind of talked about that a bit here. So if you go to the library, you can import all your items from Zotero. So that was kind of in that library demo that we did, where you're able to attach papers to your search, analyze folders in your library. But yeah, if you are using Zotero, you can just hit import, and that will import all of your papers from Zotero, including the full text, into Consensus. And you can also just upload papers manually as well. Or if you're using a different tool, you can upload the RIS file into Consensus, and it will do the same thing.
Okay, clear. And Daniel, do you know about, like, if a researcher uses Consensus as part of their search, do you know is there like a standard method of how they should report this? Because I know that, these days
Yeah.
there are some standards on how to report that you've been using AI in your work.
Oh, good question. I don't know if I have a clear answer yet. I think it's pretty much different for everyone, but the most thing I've seen is that in this consent, like researchers will typically cite or mention Consensus in the same way that they do like PubMed or Google Scholar. It's a very similar one where they kind of indicate, hey, here were the searches that I ran. They can provide the links to the searches and then mention that it was done via Consensus. But a lot of the time, researchers are actually leveraging the actual papers that they found in it as well. So I don't think there's any kind of clear set guidelines right now. Typically, what we've been seeing is most researchers will just kind of talk about it in the same way that they mentioned PubMed or Google Scholar or any other database and provide links and the actual search terms or any filters that they've used. I think there'll probably be more about this coming out over time, but right now it's still a bit mixed based on the type of researcher and the group that they're working in.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, thank you so much, guys. And Daniel told us a lot about Consensus. If you guys still have questions, just feel free to drop them to the chat. But I want to explain to you a little bit about, could you go back to, or it's okay,
Uh,
I can just share my screen.
yeah, yeah, share your screen.
Yeah, so we just wanted to let you know why we've partnered with Consensus. So we've tried out their platform and we really love it. Even our CEO, Franz Biesbauer, has done like a little tutorial on our YouTube channel on how to use Consensus. And yeah, so we've partnered with Consensus and we actually have a offer for you guys. So if you click to the bottom of your screen, you'll be able to access this offer. And I'll just share my screen so that I can show you exactly what you're going to see. Okay, so you can see we have like this little page that we created. It's called the Mid-Mastery AI Hub. But basically what it has is it has the offer, right? So in simple terms, you get 25% off of Mid-Mastery Pro. And if you purchase that, then you also get Consensus AI Pro free for an entire year. And like Daniel said, basically that just gives you like more capabilities with the number of searches that you can do, right? And along with that, you also get Sylvie AI Pro for an entire year. So you get 2 free AI tools. And we did a webinar last week with Sylvie, so you can use the same link to access the recording for that webinar in case you want to see how Sylvie is used as well. And yeah, so this is the offer that we have right now. And if you're already a Mid-Mastery Pro member, you also get something. So you can get Consensus 30% off. So Consensus Pro 30% off. And it's the same with Sylvie. You can get 30% off of Sylvie if you're already a Mid-Mastery Pro. Over here, you have the exact instructions on how to redeem this offer, right? So you have the code AIWeb826. You type it in when you're at the Mid-Mastery checkout, you purchase Mid-Mastery, and then you're going to get an email from our team with the 2 free AI tools. I also just want to let you guys know a little bit about Mid-Mastery in case you weren't here at the beginning of the webinar. So Mid-Mastery is a medical e-learning platform where we offer essential clinical skills. So we offer video-based courses on essential clinical skills. And that includes things such as ultrasounds, imaging, emergency medicine courses. Our courses are CME accredited and you get over 450 CME credits with our courses. A lot of our courses also have hands-on experiences. So we have workshops as well. All of our courses have quizzes, of course, because they're CME accredited. And another great thing we have is we have these downloadable handbooks which come with our courses. So kind of gives you a written summary of the course and more context on it. This page also gives you loads of information on like exactly what you get with Consensus. I know Daniel already explained a lot about it, but you also have some written information over here. And it also gives you information on what you get with Sylvie. So Sylvie is a platform which is used for meta-analyses and systematic reviews. So it's a little bit different than Consensus. And you can watch the tutorial on how to use it under the same link. We would also love to work with people. So if you are an AI expert, so if you are an expert in AI in medicine, or you simply want to work with us, for example, a custom webinar, then just reach out to us and use this form and we can book a call together. Last but not least, this form also has like all of our recordings. So you can watch all of our previous webinars here. And this is basically a series on how AI is basically being integrated in medicine right now. Things are changing super fast, but we're trying to keep it as up to date as possible. We have webinars occurring almost every month. And yeah, so stay tuned to your emails for our next webinars as well. Okay, so I think that's all I wanted to show. Make sure you click the link below so that you get access to this. And I also want to hear from everyone how you found this webinar from a scale of 1 to 10. There's a poll which is currently live. It's to the right of your screens. And yeah, let us know how you found this webinar. So from 1 to 10, how useful was it for you? We're always looking for ways to improve and hear feedback from our audience. So we'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay. Daniel, did you have anything else to say?
No, just yeah. If you haven't, feel free to try Consensus. Again, it's not a mobile app; it is a website. So if you're accessing it on mobile, just go right to the website, and you'll be able to access it wherever you are. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And if you have any questions, feel free to let Noor know or myself know, and happy to kind of help walk through those. We have tons of tutorials as well on how to use Consensus, and no, Noor's going to be sending out more resources after the call too.
Yeah, exactly. On Thursday, you guys will receive another email with this link and some of the links which Daniel mentioned as well. So you'll have this information afterwards. And like I said before, this webinar, as soon as it ends, you'll be able to access the replay. So if you want to go back and watch any of the parts, you can do that as soon as this webinar ends. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you so much, Daniel, for all of your explanations. And yeah, hope you guys have a nice week ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.